So today I wanted to share with you my favorite Kang Solo that I've gotten so far. Jabari Panther is one of my favorite champions, but the way that she interacts with this fight is really fun. This is a 6 minute and 30 second takedown of Kang. It's not the world record out there by any means, but it's a really solid, really quick takedown of Kang compared to most champs, which are going to be in the 9+ minute range. The reason she can do that is because she can one-shot every phase of Kang's wounded phases and just take him down. So each one of these only takes one rotation of getting these buffs. I'm not going to lie, this wasn't the easiest solo to get. And the reason for that is that she needs to play around even a little bit more than most champions in order to get this right. But what you see here is if you go into the hunt and get that big fury at the beginning of each wounded phase, you have 11 bleeds. I think at the max in this fight I get up to 35 bleeds. Each one of them is ticking for a couple thousand, and you can see that the actual yellow numbers are hitting the damage cap each and every time. So let me talk through how this fight goes. Obviously, I'm not going to talk through how Kang works. There are plenty of fights and YouTube videos that are going to explain that. But the way that Jabari Panther needs to take this fight is that you really want to avoid going into the hunt before each wounded phase, because you want to be at 8 or 9 charges going into the hunt. Ideally 9. If you're at 9 charges going into the wounded phase, then you throw an SP1 and you instantly go into the hunt right at the beginning of the wounded phase. In 2 out of 4 of these phases, I use the SP1 from 9 charges to go into the hunt and get that fury. In the other 2, I use the SP3. But here's the thing, you can only do that twice per fight. If you try to do it a third time, you don't get any charges from throwing the SP3, whereas normally you would get 3 charges from throwing the SP3. The other thing is you can't use the SP2 to go into the hunt because it won't give you any charges unless he's stunned, and he won't go stunned when he's already wounded. You can see that throughout this fight, I actually got 3 text messages. So that's fun. There's nothing really special about how Jabari Panther goes through this fight. As far as actually generating charges, there's another text message. She gets charges the exact same way. The only difference is you want to be really stingy with those parries. I just threw a heavy there to double up my bleeds, and I'm going to throw an SP2 to drain off any excess power. 24 bleeds, 25 bleeds, and some of those are ticking for like 5k a piece. It's some really impressive damage coming off of Jabari Panther here. So now we're into phase 3, and now having to avoid stuns is a little bit more complicated. Because you have to have 2 up, which means if you're trying to avoid parries, you only have 3 options instead of 4 options. Obviously, I am going to parry a little bit. But while we're watching this, let me just talk about some of the things that I learned over the course of this fight. Number 1, Kang is incredibly inconsistent in the way that his mechanics work. Sometimes, if you have 10 charges and you just tap him on the block, he goes wounded. Sometimes, if you have 10 charges and you tap him on the block, he blocks you, and you have to handle that. Sometimes, if you catch him on a dashback, he will counter and or go wounded. Sometimes, if you catch him on a dashback, you can just punch him in the face, and nothing happens. This is really annoying when you're using Jabari Panther, because if you're expecting to try to go into the hunt right at the beginning of the phase, and you don't, or you go into the hunt and he's not wounded and he comes back and fights you, it's really annoying. Other things I learned in this fight. Jabari Panther does not have good block proficiency. She does not have she does not have any regeneration. This fight already turns off willpower, and she's not going to have very many debuffs on her anyway. So it's important throughout this fight to be really stingy with any block damage that you get. He also doesn't have any buffs for phase 1 or phase 3, so I use the Odin pre-fights here. Here we go. Let's go. 15. Let's double it up. 18. 30. Yes! 31. 32. Can I get more? 34. 35. I realize he's already at 0 damage, but, 35 bleeds is fun. Alright. So you have to be really stingy. And so in order to bait out heavy attacks, I found that if I allowed him to just hit into my block repeatedly before throwing a heavy, it was really a problem in terms of taking block damage. So what I do is I parry and then just hold the parry and hope that he throws a heavy coming out of the stun, which actually is going to work here in phase 4. I gotta say, the number of times I got to phase 4 and got to like 8 or 9 charges only to die to block damage was really annoying. And the last thing I learned after doing this fight maybe 20 times or so is not to try to punish if Kang if Kang throws his specials in slow mode or fast mode. For whatever reason, I couldn't get the timing right. I can get the dex just fine. You just saw me do the dex of slow motion mode. But if I tried to punish it, I was getting light intercepted pretty much every time. So you can see that I take the 1 charge from fully dexing the specials, but I don't try to actually punish him and get the counter charge. So that was the parry and then hold heavy in order to bait a heavy. Sorry, parry and then hold block in order to bait a heavy. Here's the slow motion dex where I don't try to punish. But here I am at 7 charges, trying to bait that heavy. Got it, no counter. Now I'm at 9 charges with the parry, up to 9 Hunter's charges, going into the last phase. Gotta throw that SP3 in order to get the good damage, get that Fury up. And this Fury is just so massive. And when she's in the hunt, she crits on like every hit. You can see 10, 20, and in this phase, I'm not even gonna have time to double up my charges because he's gonna die so fast. This was really fun to get. I spent way more time and way more units trying to get this fight, but it was worth it. I love Jabari Panther, and she is not the best option for this fight, but solid. Have a good one.